Good afternoon, everyone, to the City of Muskegon Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, August 31st, 2023. Before we proceed with the meeting, I'd like to offer a moment of silence to remember our fellow Planning Commissioner, Lawrence Spataro, who passed away earlier this week. Thank you all. We'll start with roll call.
Ken Johnson.
Here.
Eric Hood.
Here.
Jonathan Seifert.
Here.
Justin Keener. Here. Joe Doyle.
Here.
Brian Mazade.
Here.
Jill Montgomery Keys.
Here.
Tim Mikulski.
Okay, next, we'll look at the approval of minutes from the meeting on August 10th, 2023.
I'll move to approve the minutes as presented.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. There any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there any old business to come before the Planning Commission today? We do have one public hearing, and that's hearing case 2023-22.
This is a staff-initiated request to review the draft master plan after the 63-day review period and make a recommendation to the City Commission for adoption. And we have Jamie Pesch, planner in our office, who actually wrote a majority of this plan, is going to be giving us a brief presentation.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, as you know, we have been working on this for about 4 years now. We started back in 2019, and we're at the end of the 63-day review period, and this is the Planning Commission's final chance to review the plan and to make a recommendation for adoption to the City Commission. We had many public participation opportunities throughout those years. We started, like I said, in 2019. We were interrupted by the pandemic, and we picked up with our community meetings in late 2021. Throughout that entire time, we had an online survey opportunities and various updates on our dedicated project website. Most recently, we transferred a lot of that to our Connect Muskegon platform, which made it easier for people to fill out the surveys and keep up to date with the past events and future events tied to the master plan. We've held 28 public engagement events in total, and the most recent was August 15th. And all the meeting formats varied, but they all reflected our efforts to get as much public input to help drive the direction of this plan and to further mend relationships with the city's citizens. As I said, many meetings. 2019, we started with our neighborhood association workshops. These were meetings with those neighborhood associations. There were 13 meetings here, and we met with the people that serve on those meetings at their regularly scheduled meetings. Big jump to 2021. Late November, we had our neighborhood plan workshops. That was sort of revisiting what we had talked about in 2019 with the neighborhood associations. And then in 2022, in June, we held economic development and business corridor workshops. So we reached out to city stakeholders in our business community and downtown groups. We work with the Chamber of Commerce to get the word out about these two meetings. We held them at I think at the time, just next to the convention center. I'm not sure if it was fully opened at that time. And then this year, in the spring, we started with major topics of reviews, and those are the 4 key components of the master plan. We broke those down over a series of days, and then we grouped neighborhoods together later that month and had meetings out in the city to review the goals for each individual neighborhood. April 18th, we had a follow-up meeting. We had a major topics meeting on March 15th. Didn't get quite to the level of detail that we wanted to at that meeting, so we hosted another one on April 18th at our farmers market. As I mentioned, there are 4 major topics that compose the majority of the plan: transportation, economic development, natural features and climate resiliency, and housing and neighborhoods. They're basically color-coded throughout this presentation, throughout the plan, so that it's easily understood what various topics fall under. The first goal is transportation. Here, if I can get my notes to show up. That's all right. So we have 10 goals for transportation. If I know that there's been a presentation on this at a recent Planning Commission meeting, I can read through these and sort of discuss them, or I can go through. I think you all are fairly familiar with what they say at this point, and really this is going to be more of a presentation on the structure of the plan and just a more general overview than what had been given previously by Mike Franzak. Within each goal is a recommendation. So the goal number 6, to promote and improve active transportation through maintenance and expansion of the network of sidewalks and non-motorized trails. We have recommendations that further specify to establish an active transportation plan. So that would involve things like streets, sidewalks, non-motorized transportation facilities. We generally call it active transportation. And then a second recommendation to use that plan as a guide to expand the city's active transportation network. Our economic development section has 6 goals. Goal number 5 involves utilizing our natural resources to develop a strong blue economy. And within that goal, we have 2 recommendations to increase and enhance the publicly accessible amenities along the waterfront and soften the shorelines where possible, and to become regionally and nationally designated by organizations that will bring visibility and economic development to Muskegon Lake. Natural features and climate resiliency chapter has 5 goals, one of which is balancing the different interests on Muskegon Lake. The recommendations for that call for allowing a wide variety of land uses along the Muskegon Lake shoreline, that while considering the necessity of certain land uses and paying special attention to location, past planning efforts, existing context, and market demand. Second recommendation was to conduct a carrying capacity study for Muskegon Lake. Housing in neighborhoods is the 4th of them, and we have 6 goals here. Goal number 3 calls for creating walkable community nodes within a short distance of all residents, and the recommendations call for identifying existing or potential community nodes in each neighborhood to serve as strong centers from which the neighborhood can orient itself and build upon. And then the second recommendation would be to update land use regulations to permit better integration of different land uses at identified community nodes. Throughout the goals, the recommendations call for follow-up subplans. And within each section of the plan right now, we call for future plans that involve in transportation, street design standards, an active transportation plan, as I mentioned, quick build street policies, and public alley policy and standards. Economic development calls for various corridor improvement plans tied to those neighborhood or community nodes that we talked about in each neighborhood. Natural features and climate resiliency calls for that carrying capacity study that I mentioned, wildlife corridor study, and a climate action plan. And the neighborhood subplans are the only section that was completed that should say housing and neighborhoods up there. That is the one that is also being adopted with master plan right now. The neighborhood subplans have assessments of projects for every neighborhood, including a number of different topics. Up in the right-hand corner, you can see an evaluation of the zoned land use in each neighborhood. Housing choice is a pretty key topic throughout our housing and neighborhood section, so we took a closer look at that for each neighborhood. Commercial and industrial inventory of buildings and property throughout the city. Parks and recreational opportunities, and that will tie in with the coming update to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Community nodes that I'll go into in more detail in a moment. Transportation, blight and beautification, historic preservation, significant redevelopment properties. Those are large properties throughout the neighborhoods that are potential for redevelopment efforts in the future. We identified those, and a future land use map. As I said, community nodes we have identified throughout the city. These are commercial districts, public parks, civic buildings, basically anywhere there's a cluster of uses that people tend to congregate at. Some of these are historic, some of these have lasted through the neighborhoods for many years, and Some are doing well while others are struggling. And basically, this plan takes a look at each of them, historically existing, whether or not we think they could survive into the future, what needs to be done to improve upon them, and make them places where people could, in essence, gather again if they aren't gathering there already. You can see this is an earlier version of our future land use map. The area in the center is actually at the intersection of Glenside and Hackley, or not Glenside, Barkley and Hackley. And then the circles you see are a 5-minute walk, essentially, from that neighborhood center. So there's a few of them identified. They try not to overlap so much. Basically, anybody within a neighborhood could reasonably walk there within about a 5-minute time span. A lot of the neighborhood plans will call for neighborhood projects, and these are more specific, sometimes shorter term projects that were derived from public comments that we received going all the way back to those early 2019 meetings. These are, in some cases, overlapping with those community nodes that we reference. And here you see 2 examples for the renderings that we have for the plan that include the top one being the corner of Laketon and Madison, calling for new housing adjacent to the Laketon Trail, and the bottom photo being the former Brunswick site at Seaway and Laketon, and the potential to weave that site back into the neighborhood and basically call for redevelopment of it at some point in time. The bottom portion of it is the existing. Bottom portion, so St. Mary's Cemetery is in the lower right, and then just next to that.
Just to the left of where it says Temple Street.
That's where the existing building is, yeah. Sort of grayed out to highlight the site proposed for redevelopment at some point. As I said, there are specific projects for each neighborhood. This is project number 1 in Angel, and that is to restore the former farmers market site to a natural green space. It's further broken down into action steps. These are doable steps that we can take to move in the direction of the specific project. And here it's clarified that this meets goal number 6 of the transportation chapter and goals number 3 and 4 with the recommendations of, there's 2 recommendations under goal number 4 that this also strives to meet in our natural features and climate resiliency chapter. In Lakeside, project number 4 involves enhancing connections to Glenside through the public easement improvements and the redevelopment of the former railroad right-of-way. This is at the end of Greenwood Street between that and Sherman Boulevard. You can see over on the left side of the photo is the existing gas station, and then it's basically a proposal for a non-motorized path that would connect through to the Lakeside neighborhood and have various connections into the Glenside neighborhood as well. These are just one possible vision to help people start to get an idea of potential futures for these areas. Right now it's a large area of underutilized land, and this calls for making better use of it. Meets goals 2, 6, and 7 in our transportation chapter. Goal number 2 in our economic development chapter. I can break those down. There's a lot of referencing back and forth throughout the plan. And then in our Sheldon Park neighborhood, the first project calls for improving pedestrian infrastructure on Apple Avenue and Getty Street. This calls for further action steps involving completing a corridor study and enhancing the Getty and Apple corridors with streetscaping improvements. It meets goals under all 4 of the topics, and you can see in the rendering here it calls for new infill housing and new street trees along Getty and Apple. The city is currently reviewing future designs for an Apple Avenue redesign, and the Getty Street traffic study was completed within the last few years as well. So there's already a groundwork for these types of recommendations, and this basically further guides future action. Our next steps is today. This is the Planning Commission's review of the final version of the draft plan, and then with the recommendation of the City Commission, that will be heard on September 12th. Public hearing, there's a public hearing here today, and there will be a public hearing on September 12th, and hopefully there is still much to do. These next charts are a little overwhelming, but these are all of the goals and recommendations for transportation, for economic development. Basically, we have broken these down into time frame, ongoing, now, next, and task leaders involving our various departments. It's more generally for internal use and to help keep the various departments at the city on track and hoping to achieve some of these goals. We're well aware that not all of them are completely doable, even in the next 25 years, and that's about how far this plan looks out. But as you can see, there is much to do, various sub-plans to follow up on, and again, this is just a guiding vision document. It calls for various conceptual plans and projects, but some of which are slightly underway, some of which are a long time off from being underway.
Commissioners, any questions of staff?
I also have the comments that we received. I handed out some, I think some people.
She got it.
I have a quick question. When was the last master plan approved?
1997.
Thank you. So it's
We're
outdue.
Yeah, we're probably overdue for an update now. It has been amended numerous times with things like the Imagine Muskegon plan in 2003, Imagine Muskegon Lake more recently in, I think, late 2017. So it's been amended, but it's never been looked at comprehensively like we did with this update. And we did this completely in-house. We worked with consultants for the renderings, and that was the extent of outside assistance that we received. Other than that, all of the help came from the general public and input that we received both online and in our various public engagement meetings.
So a little bit about the comments that came in during the 63-day review period. We didn't get a lot of direct messages about the plan. I think there's one in here from someone from the Biking Coalition who was thrilled with the plan. Some of the other ones, people kind of browsed around the planning commission or the planning site on the website and found some of the forms we still on here for our surveys, and they decided to answer that way. And you can see a lot of them. A lot of them were really geared towards the road diet and not liking that. So they weren't really specific to the master plan, other than the one comment about appreciating the bike paths and some new ideas in there. And the first gentleman just doesn't seem to like Muskegon too much. So nothing really relevant to the master plan itself. There's no actual plan in the master plan about the road diet. There's some things in the transportation plan about connecting to the waterfront, but that's not called out as the answer to that. So these are the comments we received.
Any questions, commissioners? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience or at home that would like to speak? Come up to the podium and give us your name and address, please.
Thank you so much. Dave Ruck. I'm 1604 Peck Street. Great job. You know, I'm sure this was a lot of work. I'm just curious, since so much of this is sort of a vision, then like what the steps are to sort of bin or refine. I know you have like now and, you know, next or whatever, but like how do you then sort of stage this and how do you present that to the public? Because I assume that even with this plan, things are still malleable, and I'm just curious, like how you know, what happens now? You got this thing, you either say yay or nay. I'm assuming you're going to say yay, and then how does that work? What's that look like over the next 10, 15 years or so? That's all. Thanks.
Sure. So you can see the charts that we have, the next, the now, and those are the actual plans that we are going to be creating or we're going to be following. There's a lot of things in there just about the general vision of how we want Muskegon to be and how we should look at planning commission cases and requests. But then there's also calls for additional transportation plans, connecting sidewalk networks, an economic development strategy. All things like that is things that we are going to be working on internally and bringing to the city commission, the planning commission, when time permits, and we're going to come up with a little bit better of a schedule for that. So there's always different missing pieces. Sometimes things get jumped up to the top. Sometimes things get pushed to the bottom. We really want to stay on top of that chart so we can check things off the box and make sure we're not forgetting anything.
So what's your sort of outreach strategy for communicating, here's what we're doing now. You know, this is what we're going to do in the next year. This is what we're going to do in the next 5 years. I guess I'm just encouraging, I know that you have had these surveys online and everything like that, but some sort of, you know, way that cannot be misinterpreted or
Sure.
misconstrued, that's like, you know, here's where we are now. Here's what we're doing next week. Here's what we're doing 6 months from now. And with these sorts of, whether they're the line items in there, or, you know, that people can then reference this document and see that, or just some way so that people can know that, and so that people like myself who want to pay attention to this sort of thing can then go to those people who don't pay good enough attention to these things and be able to communicate to them like, no, this is what's happening.
Yeah, that's a great point. We do have a fairly new communications department here. That might be one of the ways you found out about this meeting. We will be working with them very closely when we are going to be creating these plans, and we do want public input. You can see all the list of plans. This is really just the beginning. We have a lot of work to do, and we want public participation at all of that. So we will work very closely with our communications department and using all of their methods to get the word out there and encourage that participation. Yeah, we can ask them to do that too.
Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to speak? Just give us your name and address, please.
Yes, I'm Cheryl Wittenberg, 1485 Lakeshore, and I will be addressing somewhat the shoreline diet, because if you do peruse the very extensive plan, which I applaud you for, there's much in it to be liked, to be applauded, and to be interested and excited about. I would also like to say to Mayor Johnson, I appreciate in the last year and a half that I've been speaking with him, the efforts that have been made by the city to reach out and to let us know more, bringing us into the loop as the citizens and taxpayers in regard to what is going to take place. Now, my comments on the plan, I did read it, and it did allude, in some respects, to the shoreline diet. Many of us do not want any more costly road diets mentioned numerously in the plan, or reduction, vacation of any major roads, i.e. Shoreline Drive, Sherman, Getty, or Laketon, without placing it before the voters. That's important. We're stakeholders. We're just as much stakeholders as anybody in this room. You know, I'm sure, by looking at all your emails and so forth, that people have been very upset about this. I will say this, having been around here for many years, probably more than many of you in this room, this is a different city since its inception. There are no anchor stores, clothing stores, jewelry stores, and restaurants that support local traffic like there used to be, and the several revamps of downtown have all failed. We don't want to see that happen again. Another multi-million-dollar mess that we end up paying for and nobody is happy with. About the parking, it is much safer to have parking lots and garages than to try to parallel park on a one-lane each direction road. We are not losing tax base to parking facilities. No one is clamoring to build in those spaces because we don't have downtown business that supports it. Many people, including myself, either live down there or have considered it, and one of the reasons that I don't consider it and that we don't consider it and we don't live far from here and we hear the clamor is all the events. We need the events. We're happy for the events, but they're noisy. I wouldn't want to live down here. Let's see. But we do have need for all the people who come to our city, who utilize our city, who go to our events, and who there was much made also in the plan about how people have gone out to suburban areas. We're never going to not need a great deal of automobile. Nobody here who's lived here longer than a minute can tell you that they're going to get out when the snow is going sideways and it's minus 10 degrees and climb on their bicycle and go to work. It's not practical. It's utopian. And it shouldn't even be discussed. Much has been made about a lot of the larger or major roads having had safety issues. In looking at one of the databases, there's been one fatal pedestrian accident from 2018 to 2021, and 3/4 of these accidents involve alcohol. Yet, we lobby for more social districts. I don't object to this. People should act responsibly. I just want the data to reflect that. We agree more public transportation, especially trains. Though I see the tracks disappearing everywhere, we look forward with great anticipation to more and needed housing and businesses. I am very curious, and there's a lot of gap between what was said in the plan and what I think is user-friendly for the average citizen. How the heck have we gone 200 years almost in this city and not have funding for maintenance for our roads? Am I missing something in that statement? Because it says that the citizens need to understand that we need to have some way of funding this. How have we been doing it? How do we project doing it? What kind of gap is there? One of the biggest complaints that we have is we don't want any utopian types of things to happen until our streets are paved. Our derelict buildings have been addressed and either torn down or made into housing for citizens that need that kind of housing. So that we have safe parks. Why would we consider developing another park like Shoreline Park when we have Pierre Marquette, one of the best parks, and I've traveled all over the world, not only in this nation, but one of the best parks in the world. We have a lot of parks that go wanting for care. My neighbors and my neighbor he donated a small park across the street from us, and I know Mayor Johnson knows what I'm talking about. We go out and we clean up that park so that there's a beautiful place to look out, and so many people who drive down Lakeshore Drive stop and take pictures there. Because the city does not have enough money or staff to do it. We do it. I pay to have it done because I'm too old to get over there and do it now. But we don't just complain. We try to offer suggestions as well. Let's see here. I guess that's it. But if you have any answers, especially to that funding one, I'd be really interested. But I don't think that people who are complaining, and I don't allow it, when I go on the blog on Nextdoor, when people complain and they call people idiots and they call people brainiacs and all that, I say they're not. And when you have a legitimate complaint, a civil right in America to go forward and say, I belong here, I pay taxes, I would like you to consider me, as I told the mayor, in a dialogue, not a monologue. That is what we need. We are sincere, and I don't see or hear many of those people, and I certainly don't allow them to abuse anybody. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone in the television audience that, well, you're not in the television audience.
I'm not. I'm live in person. Jake Eckholm, 362 West Muskegon Avenue. Just here both as a citizen and as the division director for development services. I wanted to quickly commend the planning staff for this accomplishment. So for those of us that work in public service, most communities don't do these plans in-house. They farm them out to consultants. And I think it was important to the commission and to the staff to make sure that we were really having a public input-driven and public-focused master planning process. We didn't want to just do another amendment to a plan from the 90s. We didn't want to pay a consultant a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars, come in here, stay for a weekend, conduct 3 public meetings, and then give us a document that would probably end up being shelved because maybe it wasn't super practically useful, but we were checking our boxes. So it took a little bit longer than maybe a consultant would have, and I would argue it's a vastly better product. So I've reviewed every section of this plan, and I say without any ego for the division, but with all of the credit going to the planning team, it's probably one of the better master plans I've seen in Michigan. Certainly the best one I've seen for a community our size. So I just wanted to thank the department head, Mike Franzak, and the planners, Sam Poulos and Jamie Pesh, and then even the support staff, Wendy Webster, and even back as far as 2019, Diane Rankenberger, when she was still here. They all had a hand in it, and they just did a fantastic job. So I'm very happy with the product. The public did a good job giving us a ton of feedback. So as you guys consider this document, as the division head, I did just want to commend them and thank everybody for their work on it. So that's it.
Thank you. Now, is there anyone in the television audience that needs to make a comment? No? Okay.
I'll move
Okay.
to close the public hearing.
Support.
Been moved and supported to close the public hearing. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, commissioners, we have requests in front of us.
Jamie, can you navigate back to the agenda, please?
The second page, there should be a proposed motion on there. There you go.
There it is.
All right, I'll take it.
Okay.
I move that the planning commission recommend adoption of the master plan to the city commission.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Brian?
So, I like the plan, and I will support it. Couple things I guess I just want to say as a caveat. I think with any kind of planning document, it's a fluid thing that needs to be massaged and adjusted as we go along. And I don't know the lady's name, but I think she had a lot of good points about the plan. And I think a lot of what the city will deal with respect to whether things are done this way or that way will be driven by the public or private sector, by the private sector, I should say. Developers will come along and will propose developments on sites within the city, and I think we'll use this. We will use this plan to determine whether that makes sense, whether that's what we envision for our city. So I think it's a great document to be used as a reference going forward. The thing I would say, though, that I'm concerned about with any document like this is I think it's real easy to say when a development or a particular use comes before us is to say, well, it's consistent with the master plan, so let's go along with it. And I think that as a planning commission, as a city, and hopefully the city commission, we need to look at, not only does it comply with what we think the master plan says going forward, but I think look at it in a little more detail about whether that's really a good fit. Because just because we have residential development that is being proposed on a piece of property that is designated as residential, it's not always a good fit. And I guess I just want to say that as a caveat going forward, that I think it's a good plan, but I think that we need to look at each individual project as it comes along. There are things in the plan that I think are great. There are some things in the plan that I'm concerned about, and the lady mentioned the road diet. I have some of the same concerns about that with Sherman and some of the other streets. But I think those are things that we work through as we use the plan going forward. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Mayor?
No, you. To an extent, I want to echo what we heard from Director Ekholm and supplement or complement some of the statements, and that to convey my appreciation to our planning department and staff and everyone who had a hand in this, because this was a considerable and comprehensive effort that has happened over several years. And after you had numerous public engagement sessions, the commission was like, do more. And not only did you have more, but you went out into our community and held them. You didn't just ask people to come here to City Hall to speak with us and learn from this planning process, but you went out into our neighborhoods, you went out into our commercial corridors. You even had it at small businesses where it was, less formal, less stuffy setting to encourage people to attend and to participate, because we really were intentional in wanting to welcome our residents and property owners into the process of governance and long-term planning. And so I'm just really appreciative of that considerable effort and the intentionality in which our planning staff committed themselves. And just as importantly, if not more importantly, seeing the feedback, because I attended numerous of those engagement sessions, but seeing the feedback that we received from our community at those meetings reflected in the plan itself. So it was not like a farce. It wasn't like just holding meetings and checking off boxes, like come and tell us what you have to say or think, but seeing our staff receive that feedback and incorporate it into the plan. And so it's just heartening to see that process and the results of that process. So I just want to convey my appreciation. I think that there's a lot to like in this plan from a lot of people's different perspectives. Certainly there's some things that people are going to quibble with or disagree with. But on the whole, I think there's something for everyone to like somewhere in this plan. And so I'm appreciative of the process and what's to come with the plan and its implementation. So thank you.
Well, the mayor said basically everything that I was going to say. So, so I would just say great job to the staff. I'm really impressed. I'm very proud to work with you guys. And this is a great document, so thank you.
I tried to let you go first.
I know.
Are there any other comments, commissioners? We have a motion.
Oh, I do have one more question, or a question, I suppose, then. This is for staff. Like, going forward, this is expected to come to the city commission, depending on, regardless of whatever our motion is, to recommend or not to recommend. I suspect we'll be sending it off with a recommendation to the city commission. But when it comes to the city commission on September 12th, Tuesday, September 12th, how can people access this document, and continue to give feedback up until that? So we're going to have a public hearing on the 12th. What are the mechanisms that people can access this information and continue to contribute to the process up until the city commission's adoption or consideration of adoption on September 12th?
So the plan is still available online. It will be all the way up until the meeting. It'll be there afterwards as well once it's finalized. And we're still willing to meet with anybody. So if you want to take a look at the plan, give some comments, you can feel free to call us. You can comment on the website. Or we can help walk you through it as well. So we're more than happy to help.
Is this on the social media as well? The link?
The Connect Muskegon.
I believe so,
Yeah,
yes.
yes. Yep.
Is that something that you all could like kind of update, like kind of put at the top of the list or bookmark?
I'm not sure exactly how that's run, but
I can talk to Deborah about getting the master plan reposted on Facebook or
Yeah,
something.
penny
Yeah.
Good another
Yeah.
push.
that would be a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. Commissioners, any other comments? Roll call, please.
Brian Massade,
Yes.
Jill Montgomery Keast,
Yes.
Ken Johnson,
Yes.
Eric Hood,
Yes.
Jonathan Seifert,
Yes.
Destiny Keener. Yes. Joe Doyle.
Yes. Motion passes. Okay, thank you all. Is there any new business to come before the planning commission today?
I would like to mention that the planning department, we lost one of our staff members as well. Hope Griffith, who was with our division for over 20 years, super helpful and just grew every year. She was with us, picked up all these new roles. She started as a code coordinator. By the end, she was doing that, closing on properties, writing legal descriptions, splitting properties, and really helping up front when we were short-staffed. And she will be very missed, and just want to give Hope all the credit in the world for a great job she did.
Duly noted. Okay, any other business before the planning commission today? Then we are adjourned. Thank you all.
I don't know if she wanted to add something else. She had her hand up.